Hi, Gizzard Gary here. I'm live in Topeka, Kansas from the Statehouse grounds on the south steps of the Kansas State Capitol for 2018 Kansas State 2A rally. And as you remember last year, we only had a couple people here. Well, I got news for you. We've got a lot more than that now. Just take a look at the crowd that is gathered here. I'm going to try to pan around a little bit. You can see we have a large crowd gathered here today. Pretty exciting stuff. Anyway, we've got some speakers lined up. This is supposed to start at 10 o'clock, so we're getting ready to start. And so hopefully we'll be able to hear a little bit. We're getting started now.
We got some tables over there if everybody wants to check them out, but if we want to congregate towards the middle, we're going to have a little fun because what are we here for? Oh yeah, the Second Amendment. And it's been a heck of a year for that, so we'll get into that. By the way, if anybody is here for the 420 rally, you're in the wrong place. If you want to go to that, there's a trail of Cheetos about 600 miles that way to Denver. Let's go ahead and get it started with our invocation. We're going to have our Statehouse Chaplain, DePue, come up to the stage here.
Well, shall we pray? Father God, you gave Moses a form of government to select leaders from each tribe, from among the people. You birthed this great land, this exceptional nation. You bequeathed us with inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You gave the founding fathers wisdom to add constitutional protections for speech and religious expression. And you backed up these freedoms with the right to own and bear arms. Now, Lord, we ask you to bless this assembly of saints here, patriots. We ask you to bless the work at our hands. And we ask you to bless those speaking today and those in our audience. We ask this in the mighty name of Jesus, I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thanks, sir. Let's do our pledge. State Representative Blake Carpenter going to come up and do the Pledge of Allegiance.
States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Blake. We'd like to have State Representative Willie come up and sing the national anthem for us as well.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the rampart we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, save us, the star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land and of the free and the home of the brave.
keep and bear arms, and shall it not ever be infringed. And for some reason today, we feel like there's a reason that we should secure our rights through the government and our security and our safety through the government rather than in our own hands, and that's got to stop. So welcome into it. Appreciate everybody coming out on a Friday. I know it's a work day, so thank you guys so much for coming out. My name's Andy Hooser. I host the morning radio show on KQAM down in Wichita, Kansas, and I appreciate coming up here my very first time in Topeka. Thank you. Yeah, I said the show's called The Voice of Reason, and I said for the first time, reason and common sense has come to Topeka. So we got a lot coming up, a lot of great speakers that are going to be here, a lot of candidates for different elected seats that are going to be speaking at the rally. Just a reminder for you as well that if you get a chance to head up to Lenexa after this for the KSRA, the Kansas State Rifle Association's annual meeting at the Hyatt. It's going to be great. They're going to have a lot of speakers, vendor stuff. You can see the candidates there as well. That's going to go on throughout the day today, starting at about 1 o'clock. So if you guys want to go out there, then you're more than welcome to do so. We want to thank the Kansas State Rifle Association and the NRA for allowing us to come out here and rally on the Capitol grounds. Thank you guys. It's been a heck of a year for guns, and you would have thought that once we elected someone like President Donald Trump that we could relax a little bit when it came to our Second Amendment, didn't you think?
Yeah.
But then we see what happens all the time. School shootings, mass shootings, public shootings. They're still trying to take the guns away. And even during an election year this year, we've had many individuals, even in Topeka here, trying to vote to put back regulations onto our guns, by trying to repeal carry on campus, by trying to take away the basic rights that you and I have, and it's time for it to stop.
Yeah.
Although I do have to say that Barack Obama probably was one of the greatest gun salesmen that we've ever seen as a nation.
That's right.
After every single incident that's happened over the last year or two when it comes to guns, what's the first thing the progressives like to turn to? Gun control. It's not the mental instability of an individual. It's not the failure of the system that we already have in place to try and stop the bad guys from getting a gun. And it's not the fact that the innocent people that got shot were victims because they weren't able to arm themselves and protect themselves in the first place. Which I find really ironic in a society where the progressives love to play the victimhood, and they can't even recognize a real victim when it happens. It doesn't matter what kind of gun was actually used when the event took place. I mean, we saw the Maryland school shooting where a handgun was used by an 18-year-old to go and shoot his girlfriend because of some kind of conflict. Who knows what happened? And by the way, that was in a state to where you have to be 21 to purchase a handgun, and yet he was able to get one, and yet it wasn't an assault rifle with a chainsaw attached to it, and yet he was still able to cause harm. And the one thing that stopped it was an individual, a security guard there that actually had a gun that put him in his place and ended up ending it within less than a minute.
Yeah. Someone's
They
gave it to us.
talk about let's get rid of the gun. That happened directly after the shooting in Florida, and of course they're all focused on that one with the larger guns and the AR-15 and the evil assault rifles. But yet, we actually need to look at the situations to where the gun stopped the bad guy, and that's what we have to remember here. We're not paying attention anymore a lot of times when it comes to the gun discussion and the different movements like the Me Too movement, or now with David Hogg, now that he's got a book that he can write as an 18-year-old, maybe he can tweet in it, and that'd be really nice. But one of the largest demographics of growing individuals purchasing firearms are women. And yet the Me Too movement trying to play the victimhood, maybe we should give them an opportunity to defend themselves with, I don't know, a firearm. In the animal kingdom, whether you believe in God, whether you believe in evolution, whether you just believe in nature itself, there's always a way for a species, a human, an animal, it doesn't matter, to defend itself from predators. Why in the world are we trying to take away the one way that a human being is able to actually protect ourselves from a predator when they come after us? An animal or another human being, we have predators, and we need to remember that. The progressives that are trying to take the guns away are kind of like the Neanderthals back in the day with the club, where instead of using the club to fight off what's rustling in the bushes, they go over to the bush and ask it what its gender it preferred to be used as. And common sense is kind of out the window. So it's time for us to stop playing the defense and try and protect, and to start to play the offense and start advocating for our way to keep and preserve the Second Amendment on a daily basis. So thank you guys very much. The first guest we want to have up here is with the NRA, talking about some of the national movement, the importance of this election coming up, and what we've been fighting off here in the state of Kansas. and between state reciprocity, national reciprocity, and some of the ways that we can start advocating through the National Rifle Association. He's the state director for the NRA, Travis Couture-Lovelady. Bring him on up.
Hello, it's great to be here among so many friends. Or should I call you terrorists? That is, after all, what some politicians and keyboard warriors on Twitter are calling us these days. The truth is, the NRA, all of you, the largest and oldest civil rights organization in America. We fight for the rights of all Americans, regardless of race or religion, because the right to protect your life is the most precious right you have. No organization in the world does more than the NRA to promote safe and responsible use of firearms. In fact, over the last 30 years, 30 million school-aged children have gone through the NRA's Eddie Eagle gun safety program. Try calling up Moms Demand Action or any one of those other so-called gun safety groups, and I guarantee you they don't have a program like Eddie Eagle. Not to mention all of our other firearm safety courses. In fact, 1 million law-abiding gun owners take an NRA firearms training class each year. Nationwide, we have 118,000 NRA certified firearms instructors. There's probably some of you here today. There are over 1,000 in Kansas. And they are the gold standard in firearm safety training. But we're here today because we love our country and the freedoms that make us the greatest country in the history of the world. And we're going to fight for the America we believe in.
Yes, yes. Absolutely.
Demonizing the millions of law-abiding gun owners and the National Rifle Association is not going to stop the next mass shooting. If anti-gun politicians and activists are truly committed to ending violence, they must stop pointing fingers at you and come up with real solutions that address the underlying issues, such as the broken mental health system. Let's be clear. The NRA does not want felons or the violently mentally ill to have access to firearms. But to focus on banning guns or implementing more phony gun-free zones will not make Kansas any safer. The NRA believes that schools should be able to decide the best ways to protect students in the classroom. If a community school wants to allow specially trained teachers to carry firearms in the classroom, they should be able to do so. That's why we passed that in 2013. Unfortunately, unlike the schools in the school districts in the states around us, Missouri, Oklahoma, Colorado, Wyoming, not a single Kansas school district has done so. They've been held back by the threat of losing their insurance. This is an outrage, and it leaves our schools at risk, and something needs to be done in this building to fix that behind us. I hope they do that right away. But we must find real solutions to keeping our children safe. And the gun control scheme of the week approach we've seen in recent months is not the answer. It never has been. That approach punishes law-abiding gun owners for the acts of deranged criminals. To paraphrase Mark Robinson, the gun rights supporter whose comments before the Greensboro, North Carolina City Council went viral, I'm sure most of you have seen the video, it was awesome. The law-abiding citizens of this community and many communities around this country are the first ones taxed and the last ones considered, and the first ones punished when things like the Parkland shooting happened. Our rights are the ones taken away. And we're the majority, the silent majority. The majority in this people are law-abiding, and we want our constitutional right to bear arms. The fact is, the law-abiding members of the NRA had nothing at all to do with the failure of Parkland High School's security preparedness. The failure of America's mental health system, the failure of the National Instant Check System, or the cruel failures of both federal and local law enforcement. But in an effort to be able to say they've done something, anti-gun groups and politicians rush to take away your rights. But gun bans don't work. We've been down that road before, and it won't prevent these atrocities. The federal assault weapons ban was in place from 1994 to 2004. And Justice Department study done after it had expired found it had no discernible impact on crime. In fact, during that ban was when the shooting at Columbine High School occurred. But here in Kansas, your pro-gun lawmakers this year have defeated an unprecedented assault on our freedoms. They defeated legislation this year that would have criminalized firearm modifications commonly done by law-abiding gun owners to make the firearms more suitable for self-defense, competition, hunting, or even overcoming disability. They defeated an attempt to take away the constitutional right to self-defense from adults ages 18 to 20. They defeated attempts to repeal constitutional carry. They defeated attempts to repeal campus carry. They defeated an attempt to impose a 3-day waiting period on the purchase of a firearm. They defeated an attempt just recently in the House to impose a $1 tax on every firearm and a 1 cent per tax on bullet tax on ammunition. They even defeated an attempt to take Eddie Eagle firearms safety out of the House Leadership School Security Plan. Think about that. The anti-gun politicians are so hostile towards you, they tried to remove a program that has a proven track record of saving the lives of young children simply because it's promoted by the National Rifle Association. Pathetic. But in the face of this unrelenting assault from the gun control extremists, your pro-Second Amendment lawmakers still succeeded in passing a bill to expand our rights by lowering the age for concealed carry permit to 18. Now, it's not all the way through the system. It's still awaiting action in the veto session. We appreciate those that are still pushing for that. It's got to go back to the Senate. It just came out of conference committee, then it'll go back to the House. The governor's already said he signed it. We just need you to call your state legislators and urge them to support House Bill 2042. Let's show the country that Kansas is the best state in the union for freedom and liberty. Yeah. Voters are fed up with politicians who engage in political stunts and childish name-calling rather than serious policy discussions. But if we don't speak up, we know where all this talk from the gun control groups about common sense solutions is going. We've always known what their end game was: total repeal of the Second Amendment. But recently, emboldened by the mainstream media, the gun control lobby is no longer distancing themselves from this radical idea. The protesters in last month's big gun control march told us with their words and their placards that the current debate is not about common sense gun regulation. It's about banning all guns. The men and women of the National Rifle Association, along with the majority of the American people on the Supreme Court, believe in the Second Amendment right to self-protection, and we will unapologetically continue to fight to protect this fundamental freedom. Yeah. Let it be absolutely clear. Attempts to demonize law-abiding gun owners and NRA members by threatening the loss of a corporate discount or some partnership will neither scare nor distract one single NRA member from our mission to stand and defend the individual freedoms that have always made America the greatest country in the world. Finally, I really want to say thank you to all the members of the Kansas State Rifle Association. You have been absolutely crucial in this fight for our freedoms. You've made your voices heard in the state capitol and turned Kansas into a shining example for the entire country in the fight to restore our rights. So thank you for all you do. But now is not the time to get complacent. Now is the time to stand and fight. The 2016 election was a great one for our country. The election of Donald Trump and not Hillary Clinton.
Lock her up.
But here in Kansas, we actually took a step backward. If we don't engage now, we risk going even further backward this year. So I'm calling on you now to get out and support those who have had our backs in Topeka and Washington, D.C. And to those who didn't, well, let's make sure they hear loud and clear from all of us, too. Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate all you do. God bless you. God bless the state of Kansas. And God bless America.
Well, we're going to try to move around and get a better view of the crowd here, so I'm going to walk around to the side a little bit.
For everybody else. Those neo-Nazi. And yet we smile and wave all the time, don't we? It's fantastic. As you know, and as we've kind of talked about, and as Travis talked about, and I mentioned as well, one of the biggest issues is, of course, been school shootings and the debate on what to do to stop that, whether it's arming the teachers, whether it's more security guards, whether it's the understanding of firearms, the Eddie Eagle program. Why in the world would we remove the Eddie Eagle program out of the school just to tell the kid to drop the guns, leave it there, and go tell an adult? I mean, that's the most basic, simple thing. The fact that they want to remove that shows the lunacy of the
Pretty good crowd we have here today. I'm going to try to catch a few of the signs out here in the crowd.
And it seems like the narrative from the mainstream media is the fact that we need to take away the gun to make the kids safe. And that's not the case. And there are many parents, obviously, here that understand the importance of having the firearm with you at all times to be able to protect your family and your children whenever you need to, right? Our next guest does just that. We want to get her up here. I'm really excited to have her up, as she is with an organization, 1 Million Moms Against Gun Control, as they empower women to effectively protect themselves and their families. It's Rebecca Schmoe.
It is an honor and a privilege to be here with you guys today. Let me pull up my notes. All right. We are here today because our freedom is sacred to us. We are sick and tired of the relentless attack on our Second Amendment protected rights. The anti-freedom squeaky wheels, because we know that they are not anti-gun, they're anti-who gets to have a gun. Yeah. They, along with some politicians, mainstream media, Hollywood elites, corporations, billionaires, their demanding mommies and their marching teens, and all their ilk have been getting a lot of attention lately because they are speaking louder and longer. The current attack upon our individual liberty is incessant. I'm sure that you guys have noticed, just like I have, that one of their favorite ways to chip away at our individual liberty is by no longer adhering to the concept of individual accountability. A criminal commits a crime with a gun, therefore suddenly all gun owners become a target of laws which are specifically designed in such a way that the only people who will be affected by them are the people who already obey the law. The anti-freedom crowd despises organizations such as the KSRA, the NRA, Gun Owners of America, and 1 Million Moms Against Gun Control. Why? Because we are organizations which educate, perpetuate, and celebrate individual liberty.
Right. Yeah. All right.
Look around you. Here on the Capitol steps, this afternoon at the KSRA meeting, when you go back to work, when you go to school, when you go to the grocery store, wherever it is that you are, look around you. Those people, those are the people that the Second Amendment speaks of. We are men and women of every age, every race, every creed, every class. All of us, we already possess the inalienable inherent right to be prepared to protect, whether they know it or not.
Yeah.
We who are here today are prepared to protect ourselves, our families, our communities, our schools. We're prepared to protect our rights. We are prepared to protect our freedom. We must also Be prepared to protect those who are uninformed, uneducated, not only about guns, but about their own inalienable rights. We must educate those who do not understand that the Second Amendment is the only right enumerated in the Constitution which gives us any assurance that the rest of the contract will be upheld.
Yeah!
Education equals empowerment. Yes, we must train up our children. We often speak about this when we talk about firearm safety, and getting firearm safety into our public schools is a great place to start. But we cannot stop there. Just as you and I teach our children firearm safety from day one, we must be doing the same thing with our inherent, inalienable rights. We must teach them not only what they are, but why we have them and where they come from.
Yeah.
Please, don't stop there. Train up your peers, your family, your friends, your neighbors, your coworkers. Their lives, their rights, their freedoms are as important to the protection and preservation of our republic as our own. You and I are the ambassadors of this information. We who are here, we fully understand the magnitude of individual liberty. And in doing so, we represent something far greater than just ourselves. We are the personification of the Second Amendment. We are the heartbeat of America. We are the face of freedom.
Yeah.
And we have gone along to get along for far too long.
Yeah.
Now, it is great for us to gather together like this, and we must continue to do so. We have to do this in order to combat the anti-freedom squeaky wheels and their endless media coverage and their bottomless Bloomberg bank.
Right.
We cannot rest. Education is what equals empowerment. Start today. Start wherever it is that you are. Start educating those within your own sphere of influence. Our lives, our children's lives, our freedoms depend on it. Apathy breeds atrophy. If we do not exercise our rights and teach others the importance of doing the same, we will lose the ability to utilize our freedoms. We must stand together. We must refuse to allow the anti-freedom squeaky wheels to dictate through their biased media who we are and what we stand for.
Yeah.
Ronald Reagan once said, "Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same. Or one day we will spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it was once like in the United States where men were free." I am not ready to have that conversation with my children. Are you?
No.
It is time that we stand up. It is time that we speak out. We are the majority and we are yet free.
Yeah.
Thank you all very much. Carry on.
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much,
Hi,
Rebecca.
everybody.
By
We're
the way,
still
just
going.
to
We've
let
got
you
some
know,
protesters
if you
across the
haven't
street
as
trying to
we're
make
doing
some
this, that,
noise.
some news
But
stories just came in. Me being the radio guy here, had to CNN the student wounded at a shooting in Florida this morning at a high school as they were about ready to do the student walkout, protesting guns, getting shot in the ankle, not any life-threatening stuff. But thoughts and prayers go out to everybody down there, and not sure the motive or anything yet, but that's the latest news happening right now. So hope everything's all right, and we'll see what happens with those guys. Also, got to wait for the protesters over in the corner as they did show up. We knew it. We called it. It was going to happen. Hi. There you go. No safe spaces in this area, just to let you know. Speaking of the children, it is a huge importance to understand the young generation and how they're going to continue to defend the Second Amendment once we continue to grow up and grow old, and we continue to go generation to generation. As everybody's always said on the conservative side, that freedom is only secure as long as you defend it, and it doesn't get passed down generation to generation, right? So how will the young generation continue to support and defend the Second Amendment right now? And again, being 420, I got to bring this up. And if anybody, I mean, I'm not going one side or another on the marijuana thing, but there are laws in the country right now to where if you purchase your green card in some states, like the state of Arizona, because it's still regulated at the federal level, if you get your green card, you can't get a background check for a gun. So the question is, if you try and get that as a young generation, what's your priority? Would you buy the pot or would you buy the gun? No. And with the big push today, it's kind of concerning on what our young generations will continue to do to defend the Second Amendment as we roll along and understand the importance that that's the amendment and that's the right and the freedom that protects everything else that we are allowed to have here in the nation. So I want to bring up our next guest. She's a junior at the University of Kansas. She studies strategic communications and political science. She's a correspondent for campus reform and the chairwoman for the Kansas Federation of College Republicans. It's Victoria Snitsar. Yeah!
Thank you, Andy, for that wonderful introduction. I am here today to prove to you all that my generation, not every single person in my generation, is anti-gun. On the weekend of the walkout in Washington, D.C., led by the Parkland students, myself, along with my wonderful co-chair, Charlie Bonkowski, who is somewhere in here, she and I both had op-eds that were ran in the Daily Signal. It's the news outlet of the Heritage Foundation out of Washington, D.C., and we were 2 of 5 students who published op-eds in the Daily Signal talking about the anti-gun climates on their campus. As Andy said, I'm a junior at the University of Kansas, which is the most anti-gun campus in our entire state. There were studies done in 2015 and 2016 by the Docking Institute out of Fort Hays State University that measured the sentiment towards firearms and towards the impending concealed carry policy implementation. KU, both in the student survey and the faculty survey, were rated the most anti-gun campus. So that's just to give you a little bit of the taste of the environment that I'm dealing with on my campus. Yeah. Yeah. But you know what? It's up to students like myself to stand up for our rights on our campuses and to bring in voices for the Second Amendment. This past fall, I had the opportunity to do just that. I brought in Antonia Okafor, who is a spokeswoman for the National Rifle Association and a big advocate in the campus carry movement. She's also a conservative feminist, a label that I also identify myself with, because I am sick of this Me Too BS. Instead of Me Too, I say not me. I say I need to have my gun and protect myself from the rampant crime rate and sexual assault on college campuses. I will not let myself be a victim, and my Second Amendment right is a big reason why. Now, finally, just to wrap up, I'd like to say, similar to what the previous speaker just said, you know, I believe that our First Amendment right and our Second Amendment right go hand in hand. Part of the anti-gun sentiment on college campuses was this idea that people wouldn't be able to handle themselves in the classroom when contentious topics were being discussed. I don't believe that just because you're on a college campus that any part of your Constitution should go away. Not the First Amendment, not the Second, not any of the rest of them. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Victoria. We've seen a few people trickle in since we've started. Again, thank everybody for coming out today. Thanks again to the Kansas State Rifle Association and the NRA for allowing us to do this, and actually Secretary of State Kris Kobach for coming up with the idea and allowing us to do this. Let's get to some of our elected officials and talk about this. It's been a huge issue in the state of Kansas to talk about repealing carry on campus, which I don't know why. Have you seen any issues at our college campuses yet with guns on there?
No.
I haven't seen any. I saw a couple left in the bathroom from like a janitor or something, and then someone that stole it out of a house. Again, not a law-abiding citizen. Shocker, right? So on here to talk about what's been happening so far, the legislature and our Second Amendment, and how important it is to the state of Kansas, Lieutenant Governor Tracey Mann with us.
Thanks, Andy, for hosting this and being our MC. Thank you for the NRA, all of your efforts, and the KSRA and Travis. And I also like to, you know, over the previous speakers, especially here in Victoria, it gives me a lot of hope for the future of our state and for my 4 children, and that they will be able to exercise the same rights that we are. So thank you all. What a great turnout. It's a fantastic morning. So Dave DePue's prayer, which I appreciated this morning, really highlighted something I've been thinking about, and that is this link between the First and the Second Amendment. And I think it's good for us to pause and realize that we live in a country and we live in a state where we're able to congregate like this. And our founding fathers envisioned that we would have the First Amendment and be able to assemble like this, freely speak in protection of our Second Amendment. And that's pretty cool when you think about that. Yeah. As Andy mentioned, I'm the 50th Lieutenant Governor of the state of Kansas. I live in Salina, grew up in Quinter. Governor Collier sends his greetings. At this moment, he was not able to be here because he is at the governor's one-shot turkey hunt down in El Dorado. So hopefully he's back to Big Bird. He's supposed to send me a text with the picture. We will see. Rest assured that Governor Collier stands with me in supporting our Second Amendment rights. Also know that he looks forward to speaking at the KSRA annual meeting later on this afternoon. I'd like to start by saying this. You will find no better friends of the Second Amendment than Governor Collier and I. This right is foundational, and it is the right that ensures the security and stability of all the other rights enumerated in the Constitution. I work in commercial real estate, that's my career, and we do a lot with construction of buildings. Anyone who has ever built a building knows that you don't mess with the load-bearing walls or else the entire structure will fall. Well, friends, the Second Amendment is a load-bearing wall in our Constitution. Yeah. And it's a load-bearing wall in our society and America as we know it. And if we tweak it, and if we weaken it, the structure will fall. Yeah. Very important. I grew up in the country out in Quinter, and I learned from an early age to have a healthy respect for guns and their use. Kansas has a strong hunting tradition that must be protected, and Governor Collier is participating in that right now. You also have the right to defend yourself, and we will not allow that to be taken away. Yeah. Governor Collier recently had the opportunity to shake the hands of Kansas men and women who are being sent with the National Guard, being deployed in units across the ocean, overseas to defend our freedoms. These people protect every right that we hold dear against the enemies of peace and freedom in this world. And to those of you who would take away our rights, or to those who would say you are too young to own a gun, we say this. Any Kansan old enough to serve our nation in the military and protect our freedom should not have their Second Amendment rights taken away from them. Yeah. Governor Collier and I want to thank you once again for coming out this morning. It takes hard work and determination, but together we stand united against those who would take away our rights, and we stand in support of our right to bear arms. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. From both chambers, we've had legislation pop up throughout the entire session, and not just this year, but the last few years, and we've seen some really productive stuff come through the last few years to where we're very proud to be in the state of Kansas, where we can actually represent the way we need to with the Second Amendment. And one person who's fought diligently for years on this, I'm really excited to have up here. She's the president, current president for the Senate. She's been there since 2012. She's helped fight major gun legislation, gun control bills in the Senate, and sponsored many herself as well. It's Senate President Susan Wagle.
Thank you, supporters of the Second Amendment, for being here on a beautiful, crisp day in Kansas. Yeah. I'm going to tell you a quick true story about an event that happened in these grand halls standing behind us here in the Capitol. As we were about to start the 2018 legislative session here in January, it was behind the curtains of a number of headlines in newspapers about sexual harassment going on between elected officials and interns who were here to get college credit. And as a woman, as the top woman in the Kansas Senate, I decided there's something we need to do about sexual harassment. This is wrong. People who are coming here to get a grade in a classroom and to learn about Kansas politics shouldn't be subject to sexual harassment. So we rewrote our policies, we passed new policies, we made sure anyone who wanted to tell an authority about a sexual harassment, that they would be protected. And the other thing we did was we decided to have classes. We needed to bring in the elected officials and explain to them exactly what sexual harassment is. So in the Kansas Senate, my Republicans and my Democrats all gathered, and we had a teacher, and she was trying to explain what your boundaries are. I'm sorry that we had to do that, but we had to do it. And she at one point in time said, ladies, please tell me, what do you do when you're out at night for personal protection? Do you take any precautions? And all the women in the Kansas Senate raised their hands. And they said things like, well, I'll only park underneath a light. Or another one said, well, I'll only go out at night with a friend. I don't want to be out there by myself. Others said they carry mace. No one yet said they carried a gun, but they talked about having their phone in their hands. They talked about feeling vulnerable when they're out at night if they're by themselves. And then the narrator of the event said, men, what do you do? Raise your hands. And they all sat there quietly. No one raised their hand. And she said, wait a minute, men, don't you feel vulnerable when you're out by yourself at night? And they said, no, we don't feel vulnerable. And we don't take any extra measures to take precautions. And I wanted to tell you that story because it is the vulnerable, law-abiding citizens who most need protection of their Second Amendment rights. Women, people with disabilities, the elderly, we need to protect law-abiding citizens because it's the thugs, it's the perverts, it's the thieves who are not law-abiding, who are carrying guns. Right. So I will do everything possible to protect your right, to protect yourself, to protect your family, to protect your loved ones. And in Kansas, we will be a shining star for the nation on the protection of the Second Amendment rights. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Senate President Susan Wagle. Appreciate that very much. You ever had those kids that, you know, sometimes they're the ones that throw the temper tantrums and need a spanking sometimes? Oh, that's right, you can't do that anymore. You gotta talk. To continue on from the other chamber to talk about what's happened in the House this year, some of the debates, some of the legislation, the evolution of some of the legislation that's happened there. Really excited to bring up House Speaker Ron Ryckman as well.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks so much for being here today. We all know how important our Second Amendment is, and like our Lieutenant Governor mentioned, our Chaplain mentioned, that our First Amendment helps us protect the Second. So great to see everybody here today. We talked a lot about the desire and the need for protection. And I will just say that I was reminded of something this weekend in Derby, Kansas. We have a representative from Derby over here, Representative Carpenter. Anybody been to the Riverside Cafe? There's a nice sign that greets you at the door. It says, guns are welcome. Never felt safer, but eggs never tasted better. The Second Amendment, it's personal, and it is emotional. Who in this audience is a father, a parent, a mother, has someone they love? It's personal. A few years ago, at 4 o'clock in the morning, my dog started barking. I'm at home with not just my dog, my wife and 3 kids. and somebody's trying to get in my back door. I was able to take my .40 caliber, go downstairs, keep them at bay until the police showed up.
Yeah.
It's not just my kids and your kids that we're concerned about. It's all kids, especially the ones here in Kansas. One of the things that the Kansas House did this year was pass a bill that helped protect our schools, that made our schools safer, that required our local school boards to work with local law enforcement to come up with a safety and secure plan, that provided resources for the schools to put in extra security if needed. That's the type of legislation, that's the type of common sense things that this building stands for. Now, it's not finished yet. It has to go through the full system. We have to get it to the governor to sign. We also have, which mentioned the Reciprocity Act. It has to get through the system. It has to be passed and signed. That's why you guys are here. We need you. The folks standing to my left, to your right, they need your support. The silent majority is awoken. Now be heard and help us finish this. We have 8 days. Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry if I'm having trouble holding the camera steady. I don't have a tripod with me, and I'm doing this with my free hand. Hopefully I've got the speakers in the screen because, well, I'm using the front camera and I can't see. So I'm doing the best I can. If you're still watching, bear with me. I see eight people still there. So hi, John Z.
Look forward to seeing you guys up there.
John,
our last speaker today is currently Secretary of State for the state of Kansas.
Speaker, and
also candidate for governor for the
this
state
is
of
a great
Kansas,
rally
Mr. Kris
so far.
Kobach.
Thank you, DePue. Here we go.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate you being here. You know, a month ago when we were talking about the idea of maybe having a rally, I was listening to a news report or reading one, I can't remember it, and they were talking about how some people were going to have some protests, some students were going to go out and talk about their ideas in public policy, because, you know, when you're 16 years old, you pretty much know everything you need to know.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought, you know, these 16-year-olds don't speak for me, and they sure as heck don't speak for the people of Kansas, do they?
No!
I said, I have an idea that if we call for a rally, somebody will probably show up. And I'm so pleased that not just somebody showed up, but about, I don't know, 300 of you showed up. Thank you for being here.
Yeah!
You know, anybody who's got a little experience in life and that knows a little bit about something like what Ron was just talking about, threats to your security at home or threats to your security anywhere, knows that the right to keep and bear arms is essential, absolutely essential to the American experience, both our security and our liberty. They're tied together. Security and liberty are tied together by the Second Amendment. You know, like many of you, I'm a gun enthusiast, I'm a shooter, I'm a lifelong hunter. I almost took my daughter turkey hunting this morning, but I did the calculation, like, nah, I can't make it to the rally in time. So, look, I will be taking her this weekend. In fact, I hope to get one this weekend, too. But, you know, I don't just study the Second Amendment, and I know many of you are the same way. We exercise the Second Amendment daily. We carry daily to protect ourselves and to protect others around us. The Second Amendment isn't just some abstract thing, it's a way of life. You know, I was a law professor for 15 years, some of you know that, and I taught constitutional law. And the amazing thing is when I was a law student, they didn't teach the Second Amendment in constitutional law.
Yeah, I believe it.
And I tell you, the vast majority of law schools in America, they are not teaching the Second Amendment in constitutional law. I mean, indeed, it was unusual. So when I started teaching constitutional law, I had a whole section on the Second Amendment. And we made sure the Second Amendment, and it needs to be part of constitutional law.
Yeah!
You know, Kansas is a good place to keep and bear arms. We have a strong, supportive culture that supports our gun rights in Kansas. We have made great strides, but we have had a falling back recently in our laws, and that was alluded to earlier. And in 2017, there was a bill that took away our concealed carry rights in medical facilities. Because, you know, medical facilities, bad guys don't go there, do they?
No.
Unfortunately, the Brownback-Collier administration allowed that one to become law. They did not veto it. But I tell you, if I were governor, I would have vetoed that law.
Yeah!
I know that a gun-free zone sign does not protect anyone.
Right.
All it does is create opportunities for the bad guy. Woo! You know, I spoke with one ER doc who was talking with me about this unfortunate hole in our concealed carry rights in Kansas, and he said, Medical facilities are where you need to have concealed. He said, I need to conceal carry as a doctor because sometimes people will come in high on meth and they're out of their minds, and some of them will be carrying a firearm. They managed to get it into the hospital, and he feels like he has to have one as a doctor. So you absolutely need to have your right to carry everywhere, not just in certain places. But the other reason I thought it was important to have this rally is that, you know, the left and the pawns that they use, that they find in the schools to kind of say their message for them, they are attacking not only our gun statutes and our gun rights, they're attacking our gun culture. They're trying to create an America where guns are not cool anymore, where guns are not something you should talk about anymore, where guns are not permissible anymore, where guns are not acceptable anymore. That's what they're trying to do. That's what the whole YouTube thing was about. Did you hear about this, what happened? YouTube said they are not going to allow any more videos that are instructional or demonstrational in the use of firearms. That's outrageous. YouTube is the virtual public square today. It's where it's kind of like this square right here, except you have many more people there all over the country, all over the world. And they're saying, if you want to talk about instruction or demonstration of firearms, you're not welcome in the public square. That is an attack on the gun culture. That's an attack on the idea that it's okay for normal, reasonable people to appreciate the right to keep their arms, and we're not going to stand for it.
Right.
We're not going to surrender our gun culture. If I'm blessed to become governor, you will have a governor who will use the bully pulpit every time possible to stand up for our rights and to speak up. Because when one person speaks up, then another person speaks up. And when 10 people show up, then 300 people show up. And we say, no, this is what the people of Kansas believe.
Yeah!
You know, the school walkouts and the left-wing sponsored rallies, I think they need to be answered too, because too often the media sees this and says, oh, I guess these are the only people who care about this issue. No, we care about this issue. And I have an idea. Instead of walking out of class, why don't you stay in class and spend that half hour studying the history of the Second Amendment? You might learn something. No, except they're trying to teach us. You know, one thing you might learn some of these names. Noah Webster, one of our founding fathers, he talked about the Second Amendment. He said, quote, before a standing army can rule, the people must be disarmed, as they are in about every kingdom in Europe, end quote. They might learn about George Mason, who was one of the most important founding fathers from Virginia. He's often not talked about. George Mason said, quote, to disarm a people, that was the best and most effectual means to enslave them, end quote. That's what our founding fathers were talking about. That's why we have the Second Amendment, and that ought to be taught in our public schools.
Yeah.
But instead, the liberal left wants you not to protect yourself. They want you to rely on Big Brother to protect you. They want you to rely on the government, because the government will do whatever it needs to be done to protect you, right?
Right, yeah.
Look, we talked about this earlier too. Parkland's a perfect example. The FBI failed to respond to a tip dropped in its lap. Local law enforcement visited the shooter 20 times. Couldn't do anything about it. Then on the scene itself, the school resource officer is sitting in his vehicle, not responding. Government failed again and again and again. When government fails, the individual needs to respond.
Yeah! Yeah!
There was one courageous individual, a coach, an assistant coach, football coach named Aaron Feist, who didn't have a gun. But what he did is just used his own body to try to stop the shooter and try to protect others. He ended up dying tragically. If Coach Feist had had a gun, he could have stopped the killer. He could have ensured that many other people's lives were saved. That's what should have happened in Parkland.
Yeah.
I mean, think about this. We defend our president with guns. We defend our courtrooms with guns. We defend our banks with guns. We defend our celebrities in Hollywood with guns. But we defend our children with a sign that reads, "This is a gun-free zone." How well is that working?
Yeah.
Not very well. Now, the time has come in Kansas for allow willing teachers and staff who are willing to take the training and do what is necessary to be able to defend themselves and defend the children.
Yeah.
stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. Travis mentioned this law that we have in Kansas. In theory, a school could allow teachers to do so, but no school district in Kansas has done so. They claim that it's because of insurance and liability. I don't think so. I'm going to be pushing for a law that will be much more permissive for teachers and staff who want to take the training and try to protect students. We'll make sure that teachers and staff who are willing can protect the students and protect the schools. We've also got to get these other bills passed too. And if some of you, watch the KSRA webpage, watch the NRA webpage, show up at the Capitol. Let the good legislators here have some of your support and make an impression upon the legislators who are sitting on the fence that, hey, we are a people in Kansas who appreciates the right to keep and bear arms. We need to reduce the concealed carry age to 18. Because if you're on a college campus, as our earlier speaker pointed out in Victoria, you need to be able to protect yourself too. There's no reason, if you're able to vote, if you're able to serve in the military, you shouldn't also be able to protect yourself on college campus. There's another bill that I wrote, Senate Bill 121, that hopefully we'll get through in the veto session. That's a bill that says if you're a law-abiding person and you made a mistake a long time ago in your life and you had a felony, but the judge and the prosecutor both say your rights to keep and bear arms should be restored. You have to have that agreement of the judge and the prosecutor. Well, then you should be able to expunge that crime and get your rights restored again. Well, guess what? In Kansas, the current law doesn't allow that. You can't get your rights fully restored. We're going to change that so law-abiding people can have their right to keep and bear arms restored.
Yeah.
And on top of that, there's things that are happening in Congress as well. And you have to have a governor who's willing to tell Congress this is what we need. We need reciprocity for our concealed carry permits, don't we? Yes. And how about some hearing protection? I don't know, anybody else out there who has a ringing in one of your ears because you enjoy the right to keep and bear arms a little too much? I do. Look, I mean, we need a law that will allow suppressors to be more easily, which are basically mufflers for guns, for those of you who don't know, to be more easily obtained without so much red tape and so much money to the federal government. That needs to be passed as well. So let me wrap it up by saying this. There are a lot of things we could do. We need to be even stronger in Kansas in protecting the right to keep and bear arms. We're pretty good, but we can even do better. We're going to do better in the future. But we also need to stand up like we're doing right now, stand up and say, this is what we believe. The Second Amendment is important, the right to keep and bear arms is important, and we as individuals in a free society recognize that the government is not always the answer, that sometimes the individual is the answer to protect our lives and to protect our freedoms. We also need to stand up and make the point that disarming lawful gun owners does not always solve the problem. In fact, it never solves the problem. It does nothing to stop school shootings. It does nothing to stop all kinds of shootings. Indeed, it has the opposite effect. It encourages crime and makes people sitting ducks. We are going to stand firm against that, and I am confident we will prevail. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for standing with me and standing with others in defense of our right to keep and bear arms. And on Lobby. God bless you.
Kobach. We're just about ready to wrap up, but remember, elections are coming up in November, midterm elections, and as we've heard many people say before, elections have consequences, good or bad, which means you need to know exactly what your candidates stand for, exactly what they want to do and what they will do when they get into office. And we've seen many, not just who spoke here, numerous candidates that spoke up here, but many other candidates that are just here spectating as well. So Travis Couture-Lovelady is going to come back up and let you know which candidates that are here right now that are supporting this kind of movement.
We really appreciate the elected officials that are here. So I want you guys to come on up, state reps, state senators. Come on up. Come on up. We've got many of our elected officials here. I know it's a little harder for them on April breaks, so if they're in session, we'd have a lot more here. But we do appreciate the ones that took the time to come out here. Many traveled for a long ways. From the Senate, we have Senator Karen Tyson, who's also running for Congress. We already heard from Senate President Susan Wagle. I believe Senator Randall Hardy is here. And Senator Steve Fitzgerald is here, who's also running for Congress. Representatives, we have Representative Keith Esau, who's also a candidate running for Secretary of State. Representative Ray E. Garber. Representative Francis Abbott. Representative Blake Carpenter. Representative Kevin Jones, who's also a candidate for 2nd District Congress. Representative J.R. Clays. Speaker Ron Ryckman, who you also heard from earlier. Representative Willie Dub, who started us off with the national anthem. Representative Sean Tarwater. And we have former representative and current Kansas State Rifle Association board member Jim Howell. Also, I want to recognize the candidates here. We appreciate them having the campaign presence. Other candidates for 2nd District Congress, Tyler Tannehill is here. And then also Steve Watkins, 2nd District Congress candidate, is here as well. So candidates then on the running for governor, we heard from Tracey Mann, who's Lieutenant Governor. Governor Collier and Tracey Mann are running again. So thanks for being here. Tracey. And then Kris Kobach, you heard from him last week. And he's running with Wink Hartman, the tall guy right there. Really appreciate all you guys coming out here today. It really means a lot. It should mean a lot to you guys. I know we like to focus on the negative, focus on the bad politicians, but we really need to stand up and support these guys that really stand up for us. So thank you for coming out, and thanks to them for supporting our rights.
Very good. Thank you, Travis. Thanks again to all the elected officials, candidates, everybody. Thank you guys for showing up. It's a work day. I know that a lot of people on social programs are depending on you, so appreciate that very much. Kind of important, but when things like this pop up, it's really important for us to show our support because, as you know, when the protesters get the louder voices, then everybody thinks that that's the mainstream, and they don't realize they are the extreme fringe of the population, and we cannot allow them to have that voice.
Yeah!
They're left-wing progressives, and that's not what this nation's all about. So thank you guys. Hope to see you up there in Lenexa for the Second Amendment, Kansas State Rifle Association's annual meeting. Thank you guys for coming out.
Well, there we have it, guys. Last year, we had 2 people show up. This year, 300. I've never been prouder of my state. There's some protesters in the background, and I'm not going to do them the honor of even appearing on my camera. So, hi, Mad Sexy. I guess we're wrapping things up. We still got 7 people on here. I thank every one of you who stopped to watch this video. Thank you, Midnight. Thanks for joining. I'm glad we had good news to report. We had some great speakers today. Great message. John Z says, awesome crowd. Hopefully next one will be twice as big. I know, right? 40 cal. Thanks for making it. Good speakers. Yeah, we had good message. I'm just pumped. I mean, this has been a great day. Glad I made it. So anyway, I'm going to get off here before we hear any more of this crap in the background. But this is Gizzard Gary from the Kansas State Capitol. And everybody, have a great day.